This is the Bleeding Yankee Blue podcast, discussing and debating BYB Episode 2. Welcome into our deep dives today, everyone. We're really glad you're joining us.
Oh yeah, it is a big one today. Lots to get into.
It really is. So I want you to picture this. It is August 3rd, 2026. The Major League Baseball trade deadline has literally just passed.
Right, and usually, across the league, this is when contenders are popping champagne in the locker room.
Exactly. They're celebrating these massive reinforcements they just got for this, grueling October playoff run. But in the Bronx,
Oh, it is bad.
it's completely toxic. I mean, if you're a sports fan, you know the deadline is supposed to be about hope, but the sources we are unpacking today, they paint a picture of a fan base in just an absolute unfiltered revolt.
Revolt is the perfect word for it, honestly.
They are turning on General Manager Brian Cashman and the entire front office. So we're doing a deep dive into this deadline through a very specific, incredibly passionate lens.
Yeah, we're looking at this fan-run blog, Bleeding Yankee Blue.
Right. And to really grasp the temperature in the room, we have to look at the massive collision happening here.
Well, you have this cold, analytical, entirely data-driven logic of a modern front office, and it's just slamming headfirst into the deeply emotional, championship-starved expectations of the fans.
It's oil and water.
Completely. And the writers at this blog, they aren't just critiquing a few roster moves, they're legitimately calling for a financial boycott of the most storied franchise in baseball history.
Which is wild. So let's start with the fuse that lit this powder keg. It was the very first major transaction covered in the blog.
Ah, yes. The Heliot-Ramos deal.
Right. The news breaks that the Yankees finalized a deal with the Giants to acquire outfielder Heliot-Ramos. And, on the surface, if you just look at a spreadsheet in a vacuum.
Sure, it looks like a standard, solid baseball move.
Yeah, because they were absolutely desperate for offensive help, especially with Aaron Judge out of the mix. So Ramos brings this much-needed right-handed bat. He brings, quote, thump, as the blog puts it.
Yeah, he definitely checks a very specific box. I mean, the front office clearly recognized a lack of right-handed power.
Right.
They found a willing trade partner, and they went out and acquired the asset. But the blog's reaction pivots almost instantly.
It was so fast.
1 minute, it's a brief moment of applause, and the next, it is just blistering anger. Because the fans viewed this as nothing more than a partial fix.
A Band-Aid, basically.
Exactly. I mean, they got an outfielder, sure. But the glaring, gaping holes on the roster, specifically at catcher and shortstop, they were just completely ignored as the deadline clock expired.
And the front office didn't even stay quiet about ignoring those holes. They actually offered an excuse.
Oh, the thin market excuse.
Yeah, they came out and claimed the market at those specific positions was, quote, exceptionally thin. And I really have to push back on that logic.
Please do, because it drove the fans crazy.
Well, think about it. If you're driving a car with a blown transmission, you don't just go out and buy a premium new stereo and tell your passengers, well, the transmission market was exceptionally thin this week.
That is a great way to put it. You're still not going anywhere.
Right. You have to fix the car to actually win the race.
Yeah.
Doesn't a championship caliber organization figure out how to solve those core problems, regardless of how thin the market is?
Yeah, exactly. Championship organizations don't let supply and demand dictate if they can compete.
No, they don't.
And the blogger we read, Robert Casey, he echoes this exact sentiment. He points out that winners force solutions, right? While this front office just offered up a PR-friendly excuse.
Like they're just shrugging their shoulders.
Pretty much. I mean, the trade deadline is notoriously difficult when supply is low. Asking prices from other teams completely skyrocket.
Sure, everybody knows that.
But a front office with the immense financial resources and the prospect capital of the New York Yankees, they shouldn't be constrained by a quote-unquote thin market.
Right, if the price for shortstop is astronomically high, the fan expectation is that you just pay the premium.
Because the alternative is losing. And
Yeah.
Brian Cashman just settling for partial fixes is the overarching theme driving this entire fan revolt.
They patched a cosmetic dent while the engine was literally on fire.
Exactly. Which brings us to a move that took the fan base's frustration from, a simmer to a rolling boil.
Oh, this one is baffling. Because if the Ramos trade was a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, this next trade actively caused harm.
It did. It seemingly created a brand new problem rather than fixing an old one.
We are talking about the acquisition of Nationals first baseman Luis Garcia Jr. And, well, let's look at the numbers first, because I can almost see why a spreadsheet-driven front office might convince themselves this was a smart play.
Yeah, the isolated stats do tell a very specific story.
We do. So Garcia Jr. was carrying a .283 batting average on the season, and more importantly, he was hitting .293 against right-handed pitchers.
Which is really good.
Right. And the Yankees desperately needed offense. Plus, in modern baseball, front offices are obsessed with the platoon advantage, putting left-handed hitters against right-handed pitchers.
So they saw a guy hitting near .300 against righties, and they pulled the trigger.
Yep. But stepping away from those isolated stats, when you look at the actual roster reality, that is why the blog's senior managing editor, Gina Bellezza Ochoa, is absolutely furious.
Oh, she is livid because the Yankees absolutely did not need another left-handed bat,
Yeah.
and they certainly did not need another first baseman. I mean, they already have former MVP Paul Goldschmidt, and they have their young upstart Ben Rice.
It is completely baffling. The blog actually calls this move Cashman dumpster diving.
Which is harsh, but
But true, it's like buying a third toaster because you found it in the clearance bin, even though you desperately need a microwave to heat up your dinner.
that's spot on.
And as the blog sharply points out, even the clearance bin would be insulted by this comparison. I mean, how does this actually function on a baseball field?
Well, it functions as a daily logistical nightmare for manager Aaron Boone. The blog aptly calls it a cluster. And, well, you can fill in the rest of that phrase.
Yeah, we'll keep it clean. But let's break down the mechanics of why this is so frustrating to watch as a fan.
Okay, so by adding Garcia Jr., the front office basically handed Boone a puzzle with too many identical pieces.
Right.
Against a right-handed starting pitcher, you want Garcia Jr.'s bat in the lineup, obviously, so he plays first base.
Okay, makes sense so far.
But that means Ben Rice has to slide into the designated hitter role. And the domino effect of that is Paul Goldschmidt, a highly paid former MVP, has to ride the bench.
Which is crazy. And then, the very next day, a left-handed pitcher is on the mound.
Exactly. So against a lefty, Goldschmidt plays first base, and then Boone has to creatively shuffle the designated hitter spot again, probably sitting Garcia Jr. entirely.
And the kicker here, which the blog highlights heavily, is Garcia Jr.'s defensive history.
Right, because technically he has experience playing second base and shortstop in the past.
But he was historically awful defensively at both of those positions. So you can't realistically put him in the middle infield to replace Anthony Volpe.
No, absolutely not.
And the fans are practically begging the team to dump Volpe, or Jazz Chisholm for that matter.
So he's essentially locked to first base or DH. It creates this massive, immovable log jam.
He provides zero defensive flexibility.
None. It doesn't upgrade the glaring weakness in the middle infield. It doesn't give them a reliable catcher. It just gives the manager a convoluted puzzle to try and piece together every single night.
Yeah, and the fans already felt Boone was struggling to manage the roster effectively.
Right, so handing him another redundant infielder, it addresses a need they didn't even have, while the needs they do have remain gaping wounds.
The psychology of the fans is really fascinating here, though, because the anger we're reading in these sources, it isn't just about the confusing puzzle pieces Cashman actually managed to bring in.
No, it's about what he didn't do.
Exactly. The outrage is heavily fueled by watching what rival teams did while the Yankees essentially stood still. The blog states that the Yankees have become baseball's version of a guy who spends all day browsing Amazon.
Oh, I love this comparison.
Right. You know the type. He puts a dozen items in his cart, meticulously reads all the customer reviews, compares prices for hours, and then never actually clicks buy.
It is the illusion of activity. The rumors are always swirling, and the front office is always reportedly, quote, in the mix.
But the execution is just completely missing.
If you look at the sidebars and the trending headlines on Bleeding Yankee Blue, they run through this agonizing list of missed opportunities, the ghost trades that just never materialize.
Let's analyze a few of those misses, actually, starting with Luis Arias.
Yeah, that one hurt them.
The Yankees were heavily rumored to be interested, and they desperately needed his elite contact skills and on-base presence to set the table for their power hitters.
But who ultimately gets him? The rival Philadelphia Phillies.
Brutal. And then you look at the starting pitching market. Tarek Skubal, the dominant lefty for the Tigers, was the crown jewel of the trade deadline.
Everyone wanted him.
The Yankees reportedly checked in, but Skubal ended up staying put. He just went completely off the board.
But the catcher situation, that might be the most painful example for this fan base.
Well, without a doubt.
The blog features a headline that literally reads, Yanks choose .162 hitting catcher over Adley Rutschman.
Which is just, wow. For context for you listening, batting .162 is well below what baseball fans call the Mendoza line.
Named after Mario Mendoza.
Right, which essentially means a player is hitting under .200. So you were failing at the plate more than 80% of the time.
Exactly. And whether Retchman, who is this generational talent from the Orioles, was truly available or if it was just a fan pipe dream fueled by sports talk radio.
It almost doesn't matter.
Right, the contrast between that kind of elite talent and a guy batting .162 is what fuels the outrage.
And on top of all that, you had weeks of rumors about Cody Bellinger and Lane Thomas. Fans were refreshing their feeds constantly, waiting for the notification that the Yankees landed a major impact player.
And then the deadline passed.
And nothing materialized. But I want to pause for a second and push back on the front office strategy here, specifically regarding the fans' demand to dump Anthony Volpe.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the blog is demanding the front office get rid of him. But in another breath, the blog explicitly mentions a recent game where manager Aaron Boone put Volpe right back in the lineup after a rare win.
Right, they didn't alter a winning lineup.
So is the front office actually paralyzed because they are overvaluing their own prospects, or are they just terrified of making the wrong move and getting fleeced in a public trade?
Well, that is the central tension of modern baseball management right there.
Yeah.
Front offices today possess incredibly sophisticated data models. They tell them exactly what a prospect like Volpe might be worth in 3 to 5 years.
Both in terms of on-field production and, like, financial cost control.
Exactly. And because they rely so heavily on these future projections, they become incredibly risk-averse. They refuse to trade a prospect who might be great in 2029 for a veteran who can help them win today.
But to the fans, this analytical paralysis just looks like total incompetence.
It really does. It leads directly to one of the most poignant headlines on the blog. Strategy or panic?
That's just such a good question.
It is, because the fan perception, and remember, if you've ever felt completely ignored by a brand you've invested your life into, you know that perception is reality, is that there is no cohesive strategy in the Bronx anymore.
They just don't see a master plan.
No, they see a series of disconnected reactionary moves, or worse, complete inaction driven by fear.
And it hurts even more because they're watching other big market titans act decisively.
Yeah.
Like the blog specifically points out the Los Angeles Dodgers managing to grab pitching phenom Roki Sasaki.
Oh, that stung.
When your biggest financial rivals are out there making blockbuster franchise-altering moves and your team is grabbing a redundant first baseman to create a platoon headache, that Amazon browser label feels entirely justified.
Yeah. The Dodgers' acquisition of Sasaki highlights the exact gap in philosophy. The Dodgers identified an elite, difference-making talent and aggressively closed the deal.
They didn't settle for a marginal upgrade.
Right. By contrast, the Yankees prioritized holding on to their future assets, which resulted in a roster that is marginally different but fundamentally the exact same.
So all of this granular roster frustration, the partial fixes, the log jams, the agonizing window shopping while rivals stock up, it inevitably rolls uphill.
It always does.
It has to. Granular frustration morphs into a full-scale indictment of the team's leadership. And the language the writers at Bleeding Yankee Blue use is not subtle. It is deeply personal, and it is incredibly severe.
Yeah, the tone shifts dramatically from analyzing baseball stats to attacking the core competency of the executives.
I was taking notes on the exact phrasing used in these articles because it is just relentless.
Yeah.
Brian Cashman isn't just criticized for a bad trade. He is described as, quote, steering the lineup into a lefty dead end.
Ouch.
Right. Another headline claims he was publicly stuffed in a locker during the trade deadline.
Painting a picture of a GM who is completely out of his depth.
Like he's being bullied by smarter executives around the league, and it doesn't stop with the general manager.
No, Boone gets it just as bad.
Aaron Boone, the manager, is repeatedly referred to as a doofus in charge. They have articles claiming Aaron Boone is cracking, and it shows.
It is ruthless. But if we step back to look at the bigger picture here, this specific blog's meltdown serves as a brilliant case study in modern sports fandom and consumer trust.
How so?
Well, professional sports teams operate on this unspoken social contract with their fans. Every July, as the blog correctly notes, management rolls out a highly polished sales pitch.
Oh, totally. The PR machine goes into overdrive.
Exactly. They tell the fans, we are in it to win it. We are aggressive. We are leaving no stone unturned. Just trust the process.
But what happens when the consumer stops believing the pitch?
That is the exact tipping point we're witnessing in these sources.
Hmm.
The fans no longer believe the pitch.
They're done with it.
They no longer buy the comforting narrative that a losing streak is just bad luck or baseball being baseball. When a lineup sputters, they don't blame the player's slump anymore.
They view it as a systemic, horrendous leadership problem.
Yes. The trust between the brand and the consumer is entirely broken. The fans feel like they are paying premium ticket prices, buying expensive merchandise, investing their emotional well-being.
And they are being delivered a clearance bin roster engineered by a spreadsheet.
Perfectly said.
And that broken trust leads to the most extreme action a fan can possibly take. I want to point out the ultimate plea from the blog right there in the post about the Ramos trade.
The boycott.
Yes. It says flat out, boycott this friggin' team. The front office has driven it into the ground. That isn't just a fan venting after a tough loss.
No, that is a coordinated call to action.
It's meant to hit the organization where it actually hurts in their wallets.
It is the nuclear option. The collision between data-driven management and the emotional heartbeat of sports has really reached critical mass here.
Absolutely.
I mean, front offices today are built to prioritize analytical depth, to find marginal value in guys like Luis Garcia Jr., and to ruthlessly protect long-term assets by not overpaying in a thin market.
But the fans in the bleachers do not care about marginal surplus value in 2029.
They want to win a World Series tonight.
Exactly. They don't hang banners for most efficient use of prospect capital. They hang banners for championships.
Right.
And this brings up something truly profound about the changing landscape of sports media and fan influence. For decades, a front office only really had to answer to the traditional beat reporters in the press box,
The established journalists who needed daily access to the team.
and therefore often had to play nice with the PR department.
But the rise of hyper-dedicated fan-run platforms like Bleeding Yankee Blue fundamentally shifts that power dynamic.
It really does.
These bloggers don't need press credentials. They don't care about maintaining a polite relationship with the general manager. They answer only to the fan base.
And because they speak the raw, unfiltered emotional language of the fans, they have the actual power to mobilize the base.
Right. A traditional newspaper columnist might critique a bad trade, but a massive fan blog can actually organize a boycott that threatens local television ratings and merchandise revenue.
It forces the front office to answer to the bleachers, not just the press box. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over.
Yeah, as fan-run media continues to outpace traditional journalism and raw influence, how long can a stubborn front office hide behind data models and PR spin?
That's a great question.
If a team loses the trust of its most dedicated Bleeding Blue fans by ignoring obvious flaws on the field, we might be entering an era where the fans finally realize they hold the financial leverage to force a change in the front office themselves.
Thanks for listening to the Bleeding Yankee Blue podcast. Have a good one.